video, let's have a look at the graphs of frequency tables. These graphs will end up being column graphs, sometimes called histograms. But before we get into doing some ourselves, I just want to point out a few things about the scales that happen on these graphs. So let's look at these first one. Look at the horizontal, the x-axis. Where are the numbers placed? Or you could look at all three graphs and note a comparison. And what about the columns? Where are they in relation to the vertical axis? So here are some different things that can happen. These numbers here, so we've got the number of sales and on the vertical axis, the frequency of that happening. Sometimes there were 0 sales, sometimes 1, 2, 3, 4. When it's discrete numbers like that, they're countable things, the number for the horizontal axis is in the middle of the column. It's not at the edge, it takes up the whole column. So it's right in the middle there. And because this one starts at 0, so sometimes there were 0 sales, then 1, 2, it's over at the vertical axis, touching it. Whereas this one over here, our horizontal scale does not start at 0. Well, you could have all the numbers of the different ages of the people that are asked here, but there's nobody counted for that falls into the category of having an age of 0, 1, 2, 3, up to 9. So that's why we've got a gap to show that there's nothing happening in that section. So this time these columns, they're touching. The numbers start at 10, not at 0, and so we leave a gap. And the number 10 and 11 and 12 are right in the middle of the column. They're not written here, they're in the middle. Whereas this one here, where are the numbers written? They're right on the edge of the column. So this graph here is the score of something, and perhaps it's the scores in a test, people in the class. Let's say the test was out of 50. So sometimes people might have scored 21 or 25 or 29. That means that they fall into that range between 20 and 30. And so there's a whole group of numbers in there. It's not just a column that represents the 27s. It's a column that represents a range of numbers. And so on that occasion, the numbers are written at the left-hand end of the column. And this one again did start at 0, so that's why it's right up against the edge of the vertical column. So these are a few things to be aware of when you're reading graphs, but also when you draw them yourselves. So our two questions. We're asked to represent the frequency tables below as graphs. So we've got a horizontal and a vertical axis. We always need to label them, and our axes always continue, so it's a good technique to put arrows on the end to say they do go on. Which would be our horizontal and which would be our vertical axis? Frequency we tend to put on the vertical axis. So let's write the word frequency. You can either write it horizontally, I'll do that this time around. I think I meant to say vertically. And on the horizontal axis, we would have the number of siblings. So let's think about our scale here. The number of siblings, discrete numbers, 0, 1, 2, or 3 siblings. So how are we going to represent that? We'll split that up into 0, put a dash there, 1, 2, or 3. You're probably on graph paper, this will be much easier. Where do we put these numbers? The whole column will be 0, the whole column will be 1. Let's put the number in the middle of the column then. So that's a 0, 1, 2, and 3. What about the vertical column here? So the frequency, this is how often it happens. So look at your range, smallest number is 2 up to 20. So 20 is going to be up here. How might you divide that up? There's no rules. Common numbers to divide it up by are either 1s, 2s, or 5s. I'm going to go 5s. So if I'm going to put 20 about up there, again, you'll have grid paper, so it's going to be easier to do. I'm going to put 10 there, and then 15 and 5. And so we now need to draw this. So our first column, 0 siblings, happens 15 times. So I'm going to draw a column that's up to 15 and then comes down and connects with my line there. Sometimes we shade them in a little bit. Don't spend time colouring in the whole box, please. How often does one sibling happen? 20 times. So draw our column up to 20. Shading in there. How often does 2 siblings happen? 13 times. So that's going to be between the 10 and the 15, but a little bit closer to the 15. So a bit more than halfway here. And 3 siblings. How often did that happen for this class, say? Only 2 people had that. So again, 2 is between the 0 and the 5, but a little bit less than halfway. If you were asked the question, which amount of siblings happened the most, it's the tallest column. So one sibling is the most common number of siblings. Second one, for this graph here, we have a frequency column and it says the number of words in story. I'm going to assume that means number of words in perhaps a short story. We've got ranges here for the different things that are happening. Between 0 and 99 words happened how often? 2 times. Between 100 and 199 words, 10 times. So frequency is going to go on the vertical column. So let's label our axes. Notice this time around I wrote frequency at the top of the column as opposed to down the side. Either is fine. How are we going to break up our scale here? I'm going to do the frequency first this time. What's our range of numbers? So we can include down to 0 because we've got 2 and 3. What's our highest number? Up to 12. We can stop at 12, or you might go up in sets of 5. I'm going to go up in sets of 2 this time. So I'm going to have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Sometimes we have one more as well. Label that. And what about our horizontal axis? Now we've got a range this time. First of all, check, does it start at 0 or not? Yes, this one does. And it's going up in groups of about 100, not about 100, exactly 100. So up to 500. So when we broke up our horizontal axis here, we need to go up to 500. And how are we going to label this? Where do we put the numbers? So there's a range happening in between each section. So we need to put the number at the far left-hand side. So we're going to start at 0. Then the next column starts at 100. So we're going to put a 100 on that first dash and fill them in. Although that section has 0 to 99, you don't need to write the number 99 here next to the 100. It's assumed that every number in between here is a number between 0 and 99. So for example, the short stories in here might have 87 words and 93 words. And so there's a frequency of 2. So let's now complete our graph. A frequency of 2 for the first section. Then we have a frequency of 10 between 100 and 199. So we're going up to 10. Using your ruler, I don't have one. What's next? Frequency of 12, 8, then 3. And there we are, just some shadings, fine. You don't have to colour in and spend your time using coloured pencils there. And if you were asked, what is the most common number of words in a story, you'd find either the highest number or the tallest column and an answer is a sentence. You would say the most common number of words in a story is between 200 and 299 words. What's the least? Between 0 and 99 words in a story. So that's our video on graphs of frequency tables.